Given that it doesn't appear he had enemies, the neighbors say this was a quiet, very nice, well-spoken gentleman. It does seem that, there's a case to be made that his only sin was being very public in criticizing the regime. Now, could have been a home invasion gone wrong? We don't know that. But right now, it kind of looks bad, doesn't it?
You know what, Dave? If you knew this gentleman, you wouldn't have even a second doubt in your mind to say, Iranian terrorist regime has killed Mehdi Amin in Canada, Toronto.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Markham, Ontario. And folks, before I get to our story today, if you can, please go to journalistdefensefund.com. If you're able to, make a donation. Sometimes we have lawyers to pay, sometimes it's bodyguards, but it's worth it when it comes to bringing you the other side of the story. Well, folks, I'm at Feeney Lane in Markham. Just a few days ago, this was taped off as a crime scene. You see, there was an individual, 58-year-old Mehdi Amin, an Iranian-Canadian and an outspoken critic of the Iranian regime, who was found brutally murdered in his townhouse here on Feeney Lane. It has many members of the Iranian-Canadian community upset and concerned. And we'll get to the reason why that might be. Now, you might recognize a familiar face that he's been on Rebel News programs before. This is Nasser Pooli, also an outspoken critic of the Iranian regime. Now, Nasser, this gentleman, Mr. Amin, he was a close friend of yours. First of all, what was your reaction when you heard that he had been brutally knifed to death?
It was devastating. There is no words can explain. And at that point, we knew the terrorists has penetrated the Canada for sure. From our point of it, police may say differently right now at this point because they have no, they don't have anybody that captured or anything like that in that matter. But for us, alarm went on that this regime has come to Canada now. They are in Canada, and we have to protect ourselves.
Now, Nasser, we should point out that no one has been arrested in this crime. We don't even know what the motivation could have been. But certainly the speculation amongst you and many members of the Persian-Canadian community is that this kind of has the stench of the Iranian regime in terms of going after those they do not like. I think you told me off camera, even the way in which Mr. Amin was killed, this is a typical way that the regime takes care of its enemies.
Yes, regime's signatures is killing by knife. 2018, somebody was murdered with the sword right north of Finch on Yonge Street, Toronto, Canada, by Iranian. Another Iranian outspoken against the regime, and immediately he fled to Iran. Right now he is in Iran. We don't know what posts he has, but he murdered the person right on the street there, and he left. He escaped. So this is a second alarm for us. And the funny thing about it, that Iranian government just recently, just after Mehdi's death, released a video about me with attaching me that the way Zionism, Israel, CIA, because that's how the mentality of the Iranian regime thinks. And that's why that movie was made in Iran and was distributed by their affiliates in Canada, in their Facebook pages, all over.
And, this is a significant thing, I think, Nasser, because you yourself, you've been very outspoken against the Iranian regime. You have received death threats. You talk about this video that the regime has posted about you. I see, once again, you're wearing your bulletproof vest, and that's not for show. That's for, a real present danger that could emerge by somebody that is taking umbrage to what you're saying, someone connected to the Iranian regime. For you, what is it like to I guess, live your life almost with this sword of Damocles over your head that some random individual with a score to settle might come after you, and you might indeed meet the same fate as Mr. Amin.
That's possible for every one of us. That's possible for every one of us. And this is not a joke. Unfortunately, the police did not take it seriously. I made a complaint against in January the 4th. You were in that demonstration in the Qasem Soleimani candle vigil in downtown Toronto, front of the U.S. consulate. We had a death threat right there in front of us. They were videotaping. They made a clear death threat to us. Mehdi was there, right beside me, behind me. Mehdi was there, and with this flag. And he came there, and in front of him, they made a death threat to us that you see what's going to happen to you guys. I made a complaint to 52 Division in Toronto. They came back, bridge under the water, or it was hit and miss and this and that. Then I made a complaint.
Oh, and by the way, I do remember that night very well, Nasser. I was there covering it. First of all, it was shocking to see that there would be so many people in Toronto doing a candlelight vigil for Soleimani, who was a supporter of terrorism in the Middle East. And secondly, I even had a police officer, if you can believe this, folks, actually threaten to arrest me if I were to utter the word terrorist. Check it out. What's that, sir?
Sir,
I need.
step back over there. Okay?
I'm on a public sidewalk, officer. I don't have. I'm a journalist doing my job.
Not barriers right now. Okay, now
But-
get outside the fence line.
But I'm not part of either group. I'm doing my job, sir.
Outside the fence line. Go
Watch
ahead.
yourself. So I can't perform journalism in this city now?
At this point, we're just separating the two groups, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do next.
Are we under Canadian law or Sharia law, officer?
I'm sorry?
Are we under Canadian law here or Sharia law?
We're obviously under Canadian law.
I have to tell you, I live in Richmond Hill, as you know, a significant Persian minority community there. Love that community. I shop at their stores. I eat at Persian restaurants. The only Persian person I've ever had an issue with is, believe it or not, Masjid Johari, the member of parliament for Richmond Hill, who is actually sympathetic to the Iranian regime. And the Persians I meet, in Canada, they are typically the people that fled that regime because they wanted no part of, the violence and the repercussions, the crackdown on freedom. How is it possible that this man is the MP, given that he has tweeted out his support for the Iranian regime in the past, Nasser?
Unfortunately, he is not the only one. They have penetrated. We have in the police forces sympathizers that with Iranian regime. We have, when I questioned the police officer on a live video, it's on my Facebook. You go check it, Nasser Pooli. This police officer, when I confronted them that when you met the Iranian parliamentaries in Canada, did you meet on your behalf or Canadian government behalf, or on whose behalf you are a police officer or as a politician? He said, we cannot talk about it in here. Why can't we talk about it here? Why can't you tell me? And Iranian regime, funny thing about it, they come in here as a refugee. When you want to get a refugee status, your life has to be in danger in your country from the government. That's how you can get a refugee status. When they arrive here, they get their PR immediately. They are in Iran. We have thousands of them. Or they come with millions.
Sorry, when you say thousands of them, you mean people coming into Canada that are actually loyal to the regime and are going to carry out the regime's bidding. Is that what you mean?
And they come with millions. Another other agenda is they come with millions of dollars as a business operator, as they're going to open a business.
We can only speculate, Nasser, that this was somebody who is, let's say, politically motivated to kill Mr. Amin. But given that it doesn't appear he had enemies, the neighbors say this was a quiet, very nice, well-spoken gentleman. It does seem that, there's a case to be made that his only sin was being very public in criticizing the regime. Now, could it be a home invasion gone wrong? We don't know that. But right now, it kind of looks bad, doesn't it?
You know what, Dave? If you knew this gentleman, you wouldn't have even a second doubt in your mind to say Iranian terrorist regime has killed Mehdi Amin in Canada, Toronto.
I believe you are going to go on a bit of a commute uptown to track down Mr. Johari, the Member of Parliament for Richmond Hill, a man you say promised you a meeting back in January in 2 weeks.
January 25th.
Needless to say, it's almost November, and we'll follow you along to Mr. Johari's residence and see what happens. All right, so Nasser, here we are in front of the house of Mehdi Johari. Well, Nasser, I'm going to let you make your house call. He did promise you a meeting in January. Fancy that, folks, a liberal promise that didn't come true. We don't know if he's home. He might be in Ottawa. He might be in China for all we know. He might be back in Iran. Who knows? But we'll wait here on the sidewalk. And
Actually, to be honest with you, I had contacted the regional police. Our regional police has contacted his office to get me to talk to him and to let them know. And they said, oh, he's not at the office. So I'm assuming he might be home.
if there is anyone home in the Johari residence.
That light, that it became yellow, that means they know they shut the ring off. I ringed it twice, and 2 times each time.
Well, you know what? We're going to keep our eyes focused on Mr. Johari. Certainly when there is the next federal election is called, he can't always be hiding. He's got to come out and campaign. It's actually a minor miracle he squeezed in. I think he won this riding by less than 200 votes. And
there was a speculation that the Iranian regime had hands into things in there. So, you know, there was to the last minute, all of a sudden, this is a speculation in Iranian community. They brought people, students and stuff like that to vote immediately. There is a lot of speculation going on that matter. Yeah. So because I am not sure on that, I don't want to make a comment, but I assure you, if there was no Iranian regime behind this, such a people like that Iranian regime advocated would never ever win. So there is other things are behind it that they are able to pull this off.
We know that the York Regional Police are investigating the murder of Mr. Amin. I think that the federal authorities should get involved. The RCMP, CSIS, this case to me stinks. There might be some kind of bigger story at play, and I would hope that federal law enforcement is also investigating, and we're going to find out what despicable culprit did this to your friend.
Thank you. That's also my wishes, is that all the federal authorities, they get involved in this matter. This matter has to be solved. It cannot, we are not going to keep quiet. This matter has to be solved. It doesn't matter if he was an Iranian nationality background. He was a Canadian, and he fought for Canadian people right, and he died on that way. It has to be clarified. It has to be found out. And if it doesn't, I'll be shamed from, take it from the CSIS, go to the regional police. I'll be shamed of them.
Okay, then. Well, there you have it, folks. Still, we don't know for sure who murdered Mr. Amin and what the motive was, although there are many suspicions, as we said earlier, that this looks like the handiwork of the Iranian regime. An investigation will tell the tale hopefully in the very near future. But I think it's chilling. As I said earlier, most of the Persians I know that I deal with, they fled Iran to get away from the tyranny, to get away from these kind of murderous tactics, to embrace freedom, to be entrepreneurs in our great dominion. It is so sad. It is so chilling to see that kind of tyranny follow them across the ocean and affect their lives here in Canada. And thankfully, we have people like Nasser Pooli standing up, fighting for freedom, and not bending the knee to the bullies. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, if you like us bringing you the other side of the story, please go to journalistdefensefund.com, make a donation so that we can pay our bodyguards and our lawyers to continue bringing the journalism you've grown accustomed to.